And it's important. I think people, they want the get rich quick type of thing, and it never happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the stories that you hear that someone, you know, hit it out of the ballpark their first time and it happened fast, it's not true.
In Napoleon Hill's timeless classic, Think and Grow Rich, he defines a mastermind group as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. In this podcast, that coordination is created between you, me, and our amazing guests. Our definite purpose is achieving extraordinary results in your business and your life. I'm your host, Brad Mulvey. Welcome to the Millennial Mastermind Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, here hanging out with a former guest, Mr. Ryan Florio. For those of you who have been listening since day one, you might recognize him from episode number 4. And we were just talking about it. That was 2 years ago tomorrow that we posted that episode, which is just unbelievable to me.
It's insane to think about that.
Yeah, it's crazy that much time has gone by already. But for people who haven't heard that episode, you're the TeaEO of Inca Tea, which is a company you founded 4 years ago.
Yep.
Which we can let people go back and listen to that last episode to get all of the background. But you were inspired to start the company after hiking the Inca Trail in 2012. Yep. When your Sherpa brewed some just incredible tea, black corn being or purple corn.
Yeah.
Sorry, being the ingredient there that differentiates you guys from the rest.
Yep.
But from just a high level overview, is there anything that you'd like to share about kind of the history of the company?
Yeah,
to catch people up real quick who didn't hear that last episode.
Yeah. Especially for those who have never heard of my brand or the previous podcast that you did 2 years ago. I hiked the Inca Trail with my two best friends back in 2012, and we did a 10-day hike from Cusco to Machu Picchu. And literally the very first day on our hike, our Sherpa over an open fire boiled some water, threw in purple corn, some cinnamon cloves, apples, and pineapples, and made an ancient tea called Chicha Morada. I loved it so much that I physically felt amazing during my 10-day hike, and I have a lot of health problems, so much so that my doctors told me not to do the hike to begin with because if something were to happen to me in the middle of the Andes, rescue's near impossible, cell phone service is non-existent, but I went anyways, and I really had no idea why I felt so great until I came back to Cleveland and Googled purple corn and came across a doctor at Ohio State University that's in charge of the Food and Science Lab at OSU. Her medical studies over the last 22 years have shown that purple corn helps with joint inflammation, diabetes, and weight loss, helps prevent certain cancerous cell growth, great for your cardiovascular system, has more antioxidants than any other fruit or vegetable on the market, and rebuilds collagen in the skin. So reading her studies, I quit my job, cashed in my 401k, took a second mortgage on my parents' house, and 4 years later, here we are.
Yeah, crazy story, and I recommend people go back and listen to that first episode to hear the full story and also just your take on following your passion and creating the life of your dreams. A lot of gems in that one. But for today, obviously a lot has changed over the past year or 2 years for you and your business.
Yeah.
We're standing right now in a building that you own that's basically a construction zone where downstairs your new cafe is being built.
Yep.
You've got a couple cafe fronts in the Cleveland airport here.
Yeah.
A lot of cool things happening. I was at your guys' warehouse a couple months ago here in the Cleveland area, and just a lot of cool things happening. So I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the kind of operational side of things, and today I want to get a little bit more into the functional side of starting a CPG business. Because last time we talked, a lot about the concepts of following your passion and getting this thing off the ground. But now you're really in the weeds, and we were just talking about operational costs and having comparing revenue to actually some of the costs and some of those things.
Yeah.
So from a operational side, what has changed, and have there been any big lessons since I know you've made a lot of big investments in terms of like equipment and real estate and things like that. So I'd love to kind of get your perspective on some of your lessons over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, one of the probably biggest things that I've was introduced to and encountered was Goldman Sachs does a really cool program for small business owners called 10,000 Small Businesses by Goldman Sachs. And they set aside $500 million to educate small business owners on how to kind of take a step out of your business and look at it from a 10,000 point overview. It's a 14-week course, and I can honestly say it was essentially getting your master's degree in 14 weeks. It was really intense, and they taught me how to not work in my business, but work on my business, and how to delegate to other people, because I'm a one-man band, and there's only so much one person can do in the whole scope of day-to-day business. And learning from that program, that 14-week program, really gave me just a better outlook on how to build my business from even 2 years ago to where I am today, which has been pretty nice. So, to kind of go back to what you were talking about is, we made some big, capital investment purchases. We did we were able to raise about $300,000 to buy a co-packing machine. Mm-hmm. So it's a machine that produces 80 tea bags a minute. We're the only privately held tea company in the entire country that has this machine. Wow. There's only 5 of them in North America. So it's really cool to have that capabilities of producing our teas, kind of on a just time basis. We'll have the freshest tea bags on the market, as opposed to, previously I'd use a co-packer and he would do, 2 million tea bags for me, but those tea bags would sit on my shelf in my warehouse for over a year sometimes. You don't really lose that much, I guess, credibility in the ingredients, and the intensity of the flavoring, but it's still not as fresh as something that was just produced last week.
Sure.
So we made that investment to really differentiate ourselves from everybody else. And then, like you said, we started buying some real estate in the Cleveland area to build out some cafes and things of that nature.
Nice. Yeah, and the reason I asked about some of that stuff is a lot of the audience for my podcast is people who are either early stage entrepreneurs or really interested in it.
Yep.
And especially when you're in that ideation stage, as somebody who's got that entrepreneurial drive, a lot of times you have these ideas within the CPG space or consumer packaged goods, for those of you who've never heard that term. Food products, things that will be carried at the grocery store. And
yep.
I mean, you've lived it, you're living it.
Yep.
And have done a good job of getting your product out there so far and into, the Whole Foods, the Heinen's, all these different chains. So I wanted to use this episode to dig into kind of your perspectives behind you have an idea.
Yep.
How do you make this thing an actual reality today? Because I think that is going to be a big hurdle from. It's easy to have the idea. Harder to make it a reality.
It is, and the idea is that the most simplest thing is really getting your product out there in grocery stores, but more importantly, having that sell through. Because a lot of grocery stores are willing to take a chance on somebody, especially at the very beginning, if you're a local product or you have a good product or a good story. But if your product sits on a shelf for 6 months and doesn't turn, even after a month it doesn't turn, I mean, you're probably going to lose that shelf space because there's other people out there that really want that space,
right?
Who may have a better product than you. So, I mean, my biggest thing is really believing in your product, have passion behind what you're doing. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of hard work. I still go to grocery stores and do demos, and it's funny to see when, customers are talking to me and they're like, "What? You're the founder of this?" I'm like, "Yeah." And like, well, "Why are you here?" It's like, because I need to be here educating the consumer about purple corn, the health benefits, about my teas, telling you my story. There's no one out there that can tell it as good as I can.
Right.
So I'd rather be the person doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm out there every weekend doing it. And I think just being fresh on what it is you're trying to produce or sell, always trying to be ahead of the growing curve of that particular industry. I sell tea, and there's thousands upon thousands of tea companies out there, and there's hundreds of national brands that are out there, from your Liptons to your Hardy & Sons to your Teavanas. I mean, Tazo teas, and these are big, multi-$100 million companies. And here I am, a little guy in Cleveland that had an idea and a dream based off a hike in in the Inca Trail. But now it's cool to see my product in the Bed Bath & Beyonds, the Whole Foods, the Fresh Times, the Earth Fairs all over the country, because I had that passion. But to kind of take it to the second point is, I can be that guy that only sells tea and have a pretty decent sized company. But looking at trends in different food products, kombucha is the fastest growing beverage in the entire beverage industry. Last year it did about $600 million, and they're saying by 2020 it's going to be a $2 billion industry. So it's a lot of growth.
Right.
Kombucha is made with tea. I have a great tea product. I have great branding. It was just a perfect kind of segue in for us to start doing kombucha. And we launched kombucha basically first of this year, and it's already outselling my tea right now in grocery stores.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's incredible.
Something that I spent 4 years building the tea brand on, launching a kombucha, which may be my true calling as far as the growth of the business. But we're selling more kombucha than we are tea right now.
Yeah. But you could have, on the flip side of that, you never could have gotten to the kombucha if you didn't start with the tea.
You're 100% right. You're right.
So you got to start with something, and that's a good lesson that maybe, and we'll see how it plays out. It's only April, but without starting, you can't find that thing that's really going to be that horse that you can take all the way, because people might be waiting to find that perfect thing.
Yeah. You might wait forever then.
Yeah, and it may be your first thing, but and you should probably think it's that first thing when you start it.
Yep.
But it may transition down the road.
Yeah, things evolve.
That's pretty interesting.
And I think you have to have an open mind to that, because people in my life thought it was kind of a crazy idea to focus a little bit of time doing a kombucha product. And in hindsight, it's probably the best thing that we're doing, because it's going to sell a lot faster than tea. It's a ready-to-drink beverage, so someone's going to consume a bottle of kombucha in one sitting, as opposed to a box of tea might last them 2 months.
Sure.
So that turnover is just going to be so much higher as far as volume is concerned. And hopefully this builds the brand in general, and so when people try the kombucha and they're also tea drinkers, they'll end up buying the tea that they enjoy drinking in kombucha format.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So for people who are interested in starting some sort of food product or CPG product,
yep.
Going back a little bit, what is the process to even get into a grocery store? I'm sure it varies from store to store, but you have an idea, you go out, you create the product.
Yep.
We can kind of skip through some of the packaging and getting out there in mass production.
Yep.
But you're ready to go. Where do you even take this to get things off the ground?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. In hindsight, you learn so many different things that you would have done differently. And
right.
If I were to start another business tomorrow, which I won't, because I'm going to see Inca Tea through to the end. But I would do things a lot differently. And I think the most important thing is, even before you have an actual product in hand, legally protect yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a headache. It's a burden. Trademark your name and your logos. If you have any kind of intellectual property things like patents, do all that stuff first, because once you get in the marketplace, other people are going to fight you for what you have. And I'm doing that right now. I have trademarks on Inca Tea Cafe and Inca Booch, but actual Inca Tea I don't have a trademark on. And Coca-Cola is now fighting me for it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm going to win, because they've never had a product called Inca Tea. But you have big people out there like that they have access to all these public records. They see something they like,
right,
and they're going to fight you because they have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But so just legally get your stuff set in place before you do anything.
It's great advice.
Yeah. But fast forward now to get it into a grocery store, it's a lot of hard work. It's knocking on doors. It's making phone calls. It's making connections. It's networking. Really finding out who the proper buyer in each store is. Because in some store, it might be for my case, it might be the health and wellness buyer for that particular grocery store. Another grocery store, it might be the actual grocery department. Another grocery store, it might be the coffee and tea buyer. It all depends on how big the grocery store is and how many different layers of buyers they may have. So I always tell people, just call and find out.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I'm a local guy. I produce tea or I produce pickles. Who would I talk to in reference to get in a meeting to set up, a time to talk about, carrying my local brand. And people are, especially in nowadays day and age, people love local products.
Right.
It's so hot. It's a hot button. Restaurants want local products. Grocery stores want local products. Consumers want local products because they know the artisan that goes into making something. They usually know that it's a healthier product. It's probably organic or non-GMO. It hasn't been processed 30 times over to get to that shelf. And, play along with that as much as you possibly can, especially today. Because, who knows how trends are going to be 10 years from now. But, asking questions is the most important thing to do when you're talking to any kind of grocery store to get that final decision maker.
Right. And then, so kind of the next thing I'd like to talk about is branding a little bit, because you have built a pretty cool brand. You guys have an awesome story in terms of, how you came to the idea. And just like anybody who looks at your packaging, it stands out. It's different. This whole concept of the Inca Trail, and there's some really cool imagery behind that and things like that. So what do you think about when you think about branding? Is it just a natural thing because where you discovered this product, or have you put some kind of thought behind it of really how this your brand is going to appear to consumers, whether it's in the store or online or what have you?
The story does help out a lot. Obviously, people love stories, but it goes above and beyond that. And I try to think of myself as the smartest person, but realistically, I know I'm not. So I try to surround myself with even smarter people than I am, and kind of looking at what's working out there in the environment anyway. So, looking at like logos and whatnot, you look at all the big companies out there, your Starbucks, your Burger Kings. They all have round logos for a reason, and they've done studies that have, they spent millions and millions of dollars on these studies figuring out what people are gravitated towards. What do people want to see and view and digest visually, and circle logos typically work the best. I'm in my mid-40s, and I know I'm not the coolest cat in town as far as the hottest new trends and whatnot. So I hire a lot of college students to do things. So I had a college intern that developed my logo, my boxes, my tins, my branding, my labels for the kombucha, because they're a little bit more hip than what I am. And I'm trying to appeal to a wider audience as opposed to just people in my demographics. And I think the younger generation has the ability to transcend through all different, age groups when it comes to visual branding. So that's one of the biggest things I did. And, not having a lot of money to start up with at the very beginning, I think it's important to really figure out a way to market yourself without breaking the bank. And, we did that by opening up our first cafe inside the airport. And we figured, all these companies want you to spend money on marketing and advertising, and they want budgets of like $1,000 to $3,000 a month to do stuff like that. And there's no real guarantee when you do traditional marketing and advertising. You can see impressions and whatnot and hits you get to your website, but there's no guarantee you're going to generate revenue. And so when we had an opportunity to open up a small little kiosk cafe inside the airport, I knew my rent was going to be $1,000 a month. I knew I was going to sell a product, and I knew eyes were going to be on my product. So this way I can really see how much product I sell through, how my online sales are going to increase now from people trying my product at the airport who may not be able to get it at a local grocery store in Ames, Iowa, or anywhere in North Dakota. And having that as a base platform to see how those true marketing dollars were going to be spent and how my ROI was going to be on that, it was a nice indication that, hey, cafes can work. Hence now we're on, opening up our third cafe, which really just helps solidify that branding.
Yeah. So have you seen then with the airport cafes that online growth that you would have expected or were hoping to see? I guess it was.
I was hoping to see some online growth, and it's grown 100 times from where it began, because people, they try the product and they want to get that tea locally, but they can't. So I have now set up like an online monthly subscription base. I have my website's pretty robust on the back end to really accommodate those people that want that tea but can't get it anywhere else.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So I want to revisit a quote from our first from our first interview that I think still holds true. But you said, "A life of hard work and dedication now will provide a lifetime of rewards or freedom. Work my ass off for 2, 3, 5 years to get over that hump." So have you started to see that light at the end of the tunnel? I'm just interested to see kind of 2 years down the road. If your perspective is the same on that, or if it's changed.
It's funny. It is the same. I see that light. It maybe have gotten a little smaller because instead of, I'm newly married. My wife thinks I'm crazy because I'm a workaholic, and instead of taking that money and putting it in my pocket at the end of the day, I'm reinvesting it into opening up new cafes.
Right.
You know, you're in a space right now where we're building out our location in Slavic Village, but at 2:00 I'm going to meet with people at Pinecrest over in the Orange Village area to maybe open up a cafe there.
Nice.
And yeah, it's just a big capital investment on my behalf, and it would be nice to have that money sitting in my bank account. But yeah, I'm really planning for the future, and it's been 4 years. I'm 44 years old, and I think by the time I'm 50, which will be that 10-year mark, I hope to be having a different conversation with you where I'm actually sitting back a little bit, enjoying my life a little bit more, maybe working a little bit less, but just looking back and saying, wow, the things that I did to pave that way for the first 10 years made sense and it was successful.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have that long-term perspective and not getting into it for those short-term wins, because then
you'll be disappointed.
Yeah, you're 44 now. When you're 48, you're going to be doing the same grind. When you're 58, you're going to be doing the same grind.
Yeah.
If you're only focused on those small, short-term transactional wins versus building out the long-term branding play and having these cafes and really having a presence, not just here in Cleveland, which you definitely will, but on a national or international basis.
Yeah, and it's important. I think people, they want the get-rich-quick type of thing, and it never happens.
Mm-hmm.
The stories that you hear that someone, hit it out of the ballpark their first time and it happened fast, it's not true.
Right.
It really isn't true. I mean, I was in D.C. last month for Goldman Sachs sent like 3,000 small business owners to D.C. to kind of march on Washington and do a full day of summit listening to entrepreneurs speak. And some of the entrepreneurs were like Warren Buffett, Sir Richard Branson,
wow,
the lady who invented Spanx. I mean, Tyler Perry. So all these entrepreneurs that came from nothing,
mm-hmm,
and they didn't become rich overnight. They worked their ass off from day one and never gave up.
Right.
And it was just cool because I think every entrepreneur has doubts sometimes. Is it working? Am I doing the right thing? Do I give it one more year? I mean, you'd be human. I mean, you wouldn't be human if you didn't have those thoughts. I have those thoughts all the time, but it's just nice to have it reiterated from the most successful people on the planet in their industries as to what their pitfalls were at the beginning, how many times they started different businesses in order to get to where they were today. It's reassuring that, hey, I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
And at the end of the day, honestly, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So, I'm much happier doing what I'm doing now than working behind a desk.
Yep.
And being at a 9-to-5 job and, having my 2 weeks paid vacation. I don't have any vacation, but if I need to take a day off, I don't have to ask anybody's permission to do so.
Yeah.
And I wake up every day, besides today because it was snowing out and I was just frustrated, but I wake up every day just ready to go to work, and I'm excited, and I typically don't know what day of the week it is because every day of the week to me is the exact same day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Groundhog Day because I'm excited about doing my thing.
Well, that's how you want it. Yeah, I think that anybody who's going to a 9-to-5 that they're not happy what they're doing are envious right now. And
right.
That's why they're listening to this
guys.
podcast. No, it's motivational to kind of hear that where you've gotten to with it, and I think that it's just to echo your sentiment. And I think I'm going to misattribute this quote, but I think it was Will Smith said, every overnight success has been working at it for 10 years or something like that.
Wow, it's so true.
And some people, you don't see the work that goes into things before people blow up.
Yep.
And I talk to people all the time about podcasting and starting a show or a YouTube channel or things like that. And it's very, very rare that you start on a platform like this and overnight, in those first 10 episodes, you're like Tim Ferriss and you've got millions of listeners. It takes a long time and a lot of learning. I mean, my first year of podcasting, go back and listen to the old episodes, listen to our first episode, and it's a lot
different, right?
Yeah, a lot different than they are today. And I still have a lot of growth too, but it takes that time, that investment, and anybody who's thinking about this stuff needs to be looking at it with a long-term perspective if they do want to get to that point where they're, sitting on the beach drinking pina coladas,
yeah.
or waking up every morning and going to work for a 10, 12, 14-hour day that they absolutely love. Yeah. And they're not dreading it, and they don't have that pit in their stomach on Sunday night before the week starts.
You're 100% right. I mean, being an entrepreneur it's the best thing you can ever have, but it's also probably the most stressful thing you'll ever encounter too.
Yeah.
As a human.
Well, this life we live, it's basically our own personal video game to create with it what we will, like the ultimate game.
Yeah.
And you might as well spend it doing something epic. And that might require some hard work, but hell, why not go for it and try to create something that's going to outlive yourself and create some sort of legacy. So,
bro, you're 100% right, man. You're 100% right.
So, one question that I love to ask on this show, and this came about after our last one, so it won't be a repeat question, is if you could hop in a time machine and go back and talk to yourself, your past self, and for this example, let's say, go back to 2010 version of yourself before you did the Inca Trail hike. I'm not sure, maybe you could take us back and tell me what you were doing professionally then. But is there one piece of advice that you would go back and give Ryan in 2010 before any of this crazy journey had started and this idea had even come across your mind?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, and I started at an early age. Doing the, typical, paper route, lemonade stand, washing cars, cutting grass thing in my neighborhood where I grew up. To developing a third-party CRM company called Special Client, where we did post-closing follow-ups for mortgage brokers and real estate agents back, pre-2008, 2009. But I've also worked for big companies like Deutsche Bank, PPG, Robert Half Technologies. Some of these are Fortune 500 and 100 companies. So I've been to that rat race where you go to work every morning at 7 o'clock and you don't leave till 7 at night, and you're owned by that employer. But looking back, whenever I was doing my own things, I really gave it 80%. I never gave an idea that I had 110%. Never once. And, I wish I would have, because maybe some of the things that I had developed, years ago may have been huge successes. Inca Tea is the very first one that I dove all in, and I cashed in my 401k. I took a second mortgage on my parents' house. So my parents are very, very, very middle-class people. Their equity in their house is their retirement, essentially, So borrowing that was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life, because I knew I was gambling with my parents' future, and I'm not a gambler. Even though I'm an entrepreneur, I don't like to gamble with money and things like that. I wish I would have given things a better shot back in the day, because I was always, I was younger. I was always trying to make that quick buck.
Right.
And if things didn't pan out within the first 6 months or 18 months, it was like, all right, I have another crazy, harebrained idea. Let's try this, or let's invent this. And, when I told my parents I was going to start a tea company, they were like, oh man, like, you're 40 years old. Like, are you sure? Like, you want to do something? Like, you have a good corporate job, you make good money, and why would you give all that up for, you've done that before.
Yeah.
Your whole past was being an entrepreneur. And I'm not saying it didn't work out, you weren't successful, it just didn't pan out to where you really wanted it to be. But I knew deep in my heart that Inca Tea was going to be the one that I was going to give 110% in, because it changed my life during my hike physically, and I knew no one else was doing something like this. And, I guess I also wanted to prove to all the naysayers out there that, hey, yeah, Ryan is a little crazy when it comes to doing businesses, and wow, he actually hit one out of the park this time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you found it. And I think that, and you can let me know if I'm off basis here, but without trying all those other things, you may not have known when you came across this Inca Tea idea that it was the one that you were ready to go all in on.
Yep.
Because you had felt what it's like to not go all in on something, or not be 100% behind it.
Yep.
And you knew what it would take to actually get this one off the ground.
Bro, you're 100% right.
I'd be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the past is the past for a reason, and if you don't learn from your past or your mistakes, or those hurdles, you'll never be able to succeed in the future. And yeah, I took all those things that I did wrong at the beginning, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and kind of implemented those things into, how to do things right now, and it's proved me right, but there are some things I wish at the beginning of Inca Tea I would have changed, I mean, like for instance, all the, intellectual property things that I didn't do right away, and, just, certain things that, doing it all over I would change up, but at the end of the day, this has been the best journey of my entire life. So, the past 4 years have been the ultimate.
That's badass.
Yeah, it's cool.
So for anybody who's listening and wants to give some of your products a shot, and I'll personally vouch for them, I've got Inca Tea on my shelf at home at all times.
Nice.
The chamomile, and last time we hung out, you gave me some of the kombucha, and that stuff's awesome as well.
Yeah.
Where can they find those things if they want to go online or anything like that?
Yeah, you can go to incatea.com and order tea that way. The kombucha, unfortunately, is too hard to ship because it has to be shipped cold, and it's very expensive. But the teas are in virtually every grocery store in Northeast Ohio, from Heinen's, Whole Foods, Bed Bath & Beyond, Giant Eagle Market Districts, Earth Fairs, Mustard Seeds, Acme's, things of that nature. The kombucha, since we just started 4 months ago, it's in all your Heinen's locations, Acme, Mustard Seed, and we'll be in probably about 300 more stores after the food show next week. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, go on, check those out. I think you guys have your tea on Amazon too, right?
We do. Yeah.
So easy enough for anybody to go on there, prime it up and try out the tea. It's great stuff. But Ryan, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Awesome having you back.
I appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank you again for stopping by today to spend a little bit of time with me and the rest of the Millennial Mafia. Just a reminder, you can find all of today's show notes at millennialmm.com/podcast. And if you haven't heard yet, I'm opening up my calendar to you, the listeners, to hop on a 15-minute call with me. The sole purpose of this call is to connect and get to know each other. I want to forge true relationships with you so that we can build up an amazing network and community of ambitious millennials who are going to be the leaders and influencers of tomorrow. If you're interested, please just go to millennialmm.com/call and snag a 15-minute time slot. I look forward to connecting with you. Peace out.